I've been testing the Google Fitbit Air for a few weeks now. No display, just a thin band on your wrist that quietly monitors everything 24/7, your heart rate, steps, sleep, HRV, AFib, SpO2 to just name a few. It also gives you metrics like daily readiness and cardio load, and attempts to automatically detect when you're exercising. It all comes together in the recently launched Google Health app, essentially a rebadged Fitbit app, where you view all of your metrics. There's no subscription required, you can buy the device outright and get access to all its main features with no further outlay. I got a 3-month free trial of the premium features when I bought mine, so I'll be talking about those too. So let's get started. The Fitbit Air cost me £85 here in the UK in this blue colourway, which Google calls lavender. That's incredibly well priced compared to the competition. The no subscription marketplace includes the Amazfit Helio strap at £100, the Polar Loop at £150, and the very recently launched Garmin Circa at £180. The subscription-based Whoop starts at £169 for an annual subscription and goes up to £349 depending on the features that you want. Back to the Fitbit Air. In the box, you get the Air already attached to a nylon wrist strap, plus a proprietary magnetic charger. It's about 18mm wide, making it a lot thinner than its competitors, which all sit at around 30mm. It weighs about 12 grams with the nylon band attached, and about 5 grams for the module alone. It is very comfortable to wear, mainly down to that width, but also the slim ergonomic form factor of the device itself. Spec-wise, it has an optical heart rate monitor, a 3-axis accelerometer, and a gyroscope, red and infrared sensors for SpO2 monitoring, a temperature sensor, and a vibration motor. The battery is lithium polymer, with Google claiming up to 7 days of battery life, and I'm pleased to say that it's exceeded that in real-world testing. My first full to empty cycle was 7 days and 20 hours, and the second lasted 8 days and 13 hours. Google also claims a 0 to 100% charge time of 90 minutes, but I've actually found it charging fully in about an hour, once again beating the claims. It has Bluetooth 5.0 and it is water resistant to 50 meters. Just a quick break to say, if you are considering buying the Fitbit Air or anything else like the other activity trackers from Amazon, please consider using my referral codes. They'll be in the description, and they really help keep this channel going at no extra cost to you. Back to the review. Moving on to the app experience, the Google Health app is pretty good. It feels like it's trying to establish its own visual identity rather than copying Whoop's homework like some competitors in this space have done. If anything, it sits closer to Apple Health than anything else. It's divided into 4 key areas: today, fitness, sleep, and health. In today, you get a summary of up to 12 chosen daily metrics, plus, for those on premium, a daily AI-generated update based on your stats. In fitness, you can manually start a workout from around 40 options, or follow along with something from the workout library if you're on the premium plan, which includes content from Peloton, amongst others. It also shows recent activities, including those automatically detected. I'll come back to auto detection shortly. You also get key metric infographics with the last 7 days shown in chart form right there at a glance. No extra taps needed. In sleep, premium users get an AI summary of their recent sleep, first of all, followed by all the key sleep metrics in the same style as in the fitness section, with 7-day charts available at a glance, but more on actual sleep tracking performance shortly. In health, you get your 5 vitals and whether they're in range, followed by your key health metrics, all presented neatly with the option to deep dive into each one. Depending on your region, you can also connect it with your healthcare provider to pull in data directly from your medical records, which I guess is a nice feature if you want it. Overall, I think the Google Health app has real promise. It's not starting from scratch, it's essentially rebadging and building on the previous Fitbit app. It has a few bugs and quirks, but even in the short time I've been using it, it seems to be fixing them as quickly as they pop up, which is a good sign. The metric insights across the app look as good as in any other app, I think. They are cleanly laid out. There is a nice use of color and shape, and tapping into each one gives you deeper analysis. The premium AI coach stuff is actually really interesting and shows some real promise. The summaries strike a more conversational human tone than a lot of AI that I've encountered. It can feel a bit stalkerish at times. It pulls in geodata, so an update might reference a late night out in Liverpool, for example, without me even telling it I was there. But usefully, it also remembers what I tell it. When I mentioned doing a high rocks workout, it started occasionally suggesting high rocks type sessions in its daily suggestions. Or if I do a brick type session, say rowing and running, it can decide that I want to do the same thing every week, which to be honest, has got a little bit annoying. But given the short time I've had with the app, it's actually enjoyable to use and interact with, far more so than Polar's Flow app, and the bugs, as I've already mentioned, do seem to get ironed out pretty quickly. Moving on to automatic activity tracking. This is where the Fitbit Air's screenless, always-on design really gets put to the test because there's no screen and there's no manual start button. It's doing everything automatically in the background without you touching it, which is either brilliant or a bit of a gamble, depending on how you like to look at it. I tested the Fitbit against manually starting and stopping activities on my Garmin watch, which is connected to a Polar VeritySense heart rate monitor as the benchmark. For settings, I had walk set to off, cycle set to 10 minutes or longer, sport 15 minutes or longer, and all other workouts 10 minutes or longer, which were all the minimum duration allowed. Let's start with running, since that's my primary activity. And the good news is this is where the Fitbit Air is at its most impressive. Across 12 runs over the test period, ranging from a quick 5K up to a 12K trail run, auto detection picked up every single one, no misses. On duration, it's remarkably close, sometimes bang on compared to the actual time recorded on my watch. The biggest gap across the period was around 5 minutes, and the average distance between automatic and actual time across all 12 runs was only 2 minutes and 5 seconds on the Fitbit. Next, Strava relative effort scores, and this is the one that really impressed me. The Garmin paired to the Polar VeritySense averaged across the 12 runs a 73, the Fitbit Air average 74. An average difference of 1 point across the entire test period. Some sessions matched exactly. The road run on the 16th and the road run on the 27th both landed identically. And even when there is a gap, it's rarely more than a few points either way. For understanding how hard you're hitting your runs from a recovery perspective, the Fitbit Air on the wrist is doing a genuinely excellent job compared to one of the best-in-class sensors, the Polar VeritySense worn on my bicep. Distance is where the Fitbit Air is a genuine surprise, and I want to emphasize this. The band has no GPS, none. It's calculating distance purely from movement and heart rate data. To double check, I ran a number of times without my phone in case it was drawing on that, and the results still held up. Across 12 runs, some sessions were almost identical, such as the 5K on the 9th of June. That was a perfect match. Others overshot by around a kilometre, but honestly, for a GPS-free device, that is genuinely impressive, and it's more of a bonus rather than a primary feature. Overall, for running, the Fitbit is genuinely great. If absolute precision is your priority, it's not going to give you that. But if ballpark figures for duration and distance are fine for you, it's hard to find a screen-free device doing a better job. So moving on to other activities. So running is clearly where the Fitbit Air earns its stripes, but what about everything else? Because if your training looks anything like mine during this test period, it was a mix of swimming, racket sports, multi-sports events, and high rocks. And the picture now gets a lot more complicated. Across the 12 non-running events in the test period, the Fitbit only properly detected 3 of them. Everything else was either a complete miss or detected so poorly that the data wasn't really usable. So let me break that down by group. Firstly, swimming, isolated swimming sessions, of which I did 4. There were 0 confident auto detections. 2 swims on the 8th and 10th of June were flagged as possible activities, but they needed manual confirmation, which is fine. And 2 isolated swim sessions on the 12th and 13th of June were not recognised at all. That same blind spot carries forward into multi-sport activities like triathlon and aquathlons. The aquathlon and the triathlon tell you everything you need to know about how the Fitbit handles multidiscipline events. The aquathlon was 19 minutes and 24 seconds on the Garmin. The Fitbit logged 14 minutes, missing the swim entirely and only capturing the run. The triathlon was 55 minutes and 48 seconds. The Fitbit got 42 minutes and 50 seconds, again almost certainly down to missing the swim portion. The relative effort scores were actually closer here, 46 to 50 on the aquathlon, which missed 200 meters of swimming, and 70 to 88 on the triathlon, missing 400 meters of swimming. Multisport activities were generally stored as a separate workout per discipline, such as a bike and a run, rather than one true multisport session, which for a device like this is absolutely fine. Moving on to racket sports, where I did 5 sessions across paddle and pickleball with 3 complete misses. Of the 2 it did detect, a pickleball tournament and the paddle tournament on the 16th of June, the duration chart shows just how poorly it handled them. The pickleball tournament was 55 minutes long, the Fitbit only logged 15 minutes. The paddle tournament was an hour and 18 minutes long. Once again, the Fitbit only logged 15 minutes. It knew something was happening, but it had no real idea of what or for how long. The relative effort scores for both were similarly deflated, 3 against the Garmin's 9 and 19 respectively, essentially meaningless numbers from a recovery tracking perspective. Hyrox is the most interesting one and probably the most nuanced. The Fitbit did detect it, logging 1 hour and 15 minutes against the Garmin's 1 hour and 29 minutes, so around 14 minutes short. It also classified it as a run, which isn't quite right, but also isn't entirely wrong given the running component of a Hyrox workout. On relative effort, the Garmin, hooked up to the Polar Verity Sense, scored it 167 and the Fitbit a 142. Digging into the heart rate charts, where the dotted lines mark the lapse of the session, you can see the Fitbit in blue simply stopped tracking after run 7 of 8, missing station 7 and station 8, and run 8 entirely. My theory, it thought I was running, and when my heart rate dropped during sandbag lunges, it likely assumed that I'd stopped. The bottom line on auto activity tracking, if you're a runner, this works well, detection is reliable, distance is quite good, but nothing more than a bonus feature, and relative effort is genuinely impressive. If your training is more varied, swimming, racket sports, multi-sports events, you'll probably get frustrated relying solely on the Fitbit for automatic tracking. But this is where the Google Health app actually has some nice features to help you get around it. If the Fitbit missed an activity, but you know your start and finish time, you can log it manually. And because it's always recording heart rate data in the background, it will pull that data in and calculate your training load accordingly. Similarly, if it only captures part of a workout, you can go in afterwards and adjust the time, and it'll amend the workout and recalibrate things like training load. If you know your exact distance, you can correct that too, and I'd expect the app to use that data to refine future calculations. Now, moving on to how it performs with other metrics, starting with sleep tracking. Before I get into this, I'm not a sleep expert, not even close. My reference here is the Sleep 2 app paired with a Polar Verity Sense heart rate monitor, a combination I use because Rob, the quantified scientist on YouTube, rates it as one of the more accurate consumer sleep trackers available, and I already own the Verity Sense. You probably have already watched some of his videos, but if not, I'd really recommend checking his channel out if you're into this kind of data. Unlike most people talking about this wearable stuff, he's actually qualified to speak on this stuff, and his methodologies are really solid. With that caveat in place, here's how the Fitbit Air stacked up over the test period. Overall, it's a pretty decent showing. Sleep duration is consistently slightly under what Sleep 2 records, about 12 minutes short on average, which is honestly pretty tight. REM is close to, only around 6 minutes over on average. Deep sleep is a little more inconsistent, over-reporting by about 8 minutes on average, with some nights quite accurate and others off by closer to half an hour. The biggest gap is light sleep, which the Fitbit underreports by about 33 minutes on average, but that is probably just down to the knock-on effect of nudging REM and deep sleep slightly higher, so the maths have to come out somewhere. Awake time is interesting. The Fitbit actually records slightly more wakefulness than sleep too, about 9 minutes on average, with one outlier night off by about half an hour, which was a genuinely restless night for me anyway. The bottom line, for most people, this is probably more than good enough. It's not perfect, but it's consistent, and consistent errors are actually more useful than a random one because you can account for them. As a day-to-day picture of your sleep, I think it does a pretty solid job. Beyond sleep and activity tracking, let's look at some of the key daily metrics such as recovery, steps, HRV and calories, and how the Fitbit Air stacked up against the Garmin Epix Pro Gen 2. Starting with recovery and readiness, but first a caveat. Comparing recovery and readiness scores between the Fitbit and Garmin is a little bit like comparing apples and oranges, since they're calculated using each company's own proprietary algorithm. So don't read too much into the specific numbers. What matters is if the direction of travel kind of makes sense. And broadly it does. Across the 15 days where the Fitbit has data, the two track each other reasonably well. The first few days are likely the Fitbit just getting its bearings. It does tend to sit lower than the Garmin, averaging around 70 against the Garmin's 77, so it leans slightly more conservative on how recovered it thinks you are. Whether that's more or less accurate is hard to say, but the trend line is similar enough to be useful as a daily signal. Steps is the closest of all four metrics. Across all 20 days, the average difference is just 121 steps a day, almost nothing. On the biggest activity days, the 13th, 14th and 16th of June, the two are basically identical, tracking 18,000 and 22,000 steps in lockstep. There are a couple of wobblier days, the 11th of June the most notable, with a gap of around 1,800 steps, and the 15th of June where the Fitbit ran about 2,000 steps higher than the Garmin, but across the full 20-day period, step tracking is really as close as you want it to be. Really solid. HRV is interesting because the Fitbit is consistently lower than the Garmin, and I mean consistently. Across every single day of the test period, the average gap is around 6 milliseconds. This isn't random noise, it's a systematic difference, almost certainly down to the measurement methodology and algorithm, rather than one device being right and the other wrong. My advice here is the same as it always is with HRV. Track the trend over time on your chosen device, don't fixate on the absolute number, and don't compare figures directly across different manufacturers and devices. On to calories. Across all 20 days, the Fitbit over-reports compared to the Garmin by an average of around 239 calories a day, stretching to over 500 on the busiest training days. If you're using your wearable to actively manage a calorie deficit, that's genuinely worth knowing. That said, calorie calculation on any wrist-worn optical device is an estimate, not a measurement. Neither device is a gold standard here, but the Fitbit does lean on the optimistic side, and it's useful to know that going in. So overall, my thoughts on the Fitbit Air are pretty positive. The price point is excellent, lower than all of its rivals. It's comfortable to wear with good battery life, and it has some nice unique features like estimating running distance, which no other screen-free wearable I've tested manages. As a runner, its auto detection is really excellent, but if you're primarily doing other types of sport, you'll need to decide how much it matters that it's not so great in those areas at the moment. I think the Google Health app experience is good, and I think it'll only get better. It's definitely been more enjoyable to use than the likes of the Polar Flow app. It does a decent job with sleep, and the other metrics I've covered are fine. No absolute disasters. I've just bought Garmin's entry into the screen-free wearable space, the Circa, costing a whopping £180. So it'll be interesting to see if it can justify that £100 premium over the Fitbit Air. If you want to see that review, as well as a future comparative review between the Fitbit Air, the Amazfit Helio Strap, the Garmin Circa, and the Polar Flow, subscribe to the channel because those videos will be coming up over the next few weeks. Remember to use my referral codes if you are shopping on Amazon. They do really help me keep buying these products to test. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.